it's all about telling that story that you're going to have a substantial investment in a business. It's not just supporting yourself and your family, and it's going to be employing people and having an economic impact both in your immediate area and the broader geographic area.
This episode brought to you by Suites at Madison. Meeting and conference rooms for rent by the hour, week, month, or year. Suites at Madison, where business gets done. Check them out at www.downtowntampaoffice.com. Now, on to the show.
You are listening to the Invest Florida Real Estate Show, covering topics in lending, buy and sell strategies, property management, hot markets, and tips and tools to guide you along the way on your path to real estate success. You want Florida investment real estate talk? You have come to the right place. And now, our hosts, Eric Odom and Steven Silverman.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Invest Florida Real Estate Show. This is your co-host, Eric Odom, along with Steven Silverman, entering the holiday period. Steven, what's new?
Well, Eric, actually, it was a fun weekend. This weekend was my birthday, but what was interesting about that is, I had Zoom calls or FaceTime with Australia, with Canada, with South Africa, and of course in America. And everybody's really far, but they're really close. And we're real estate brokers. We're dealing with people on a personal level every day in different countries, but also in business. And the topic we're going to cover today is important for all those people, the foreign investors who are thinking about working and getting visas and investing in America.
I give chats around the state on investment RIAs, done numerous Zoom calls in person around the area. It's really interesting. Florida, you guys that are investing right now and your realtors, brokers, investors in the state of Florida, there's no better place in the country or in the world, really. We live in a great country. We're blessed. It's a wonderful place, and it has great business laws. Florida has great business laws, and people want to be here. And there's a movement in Florida, has been ever since I've been alive, that it is just a lot of pressure on the state for people who want to be here. And as a result, the investors want to be here too, because there's great opportunities here like probably none other. And it attracts a lot of attention from folks outside of the state and outside of the country to try to figure out what's going on. The I-4 corridor is probably the hottest institutional investor market for industrial, for example. But anywhere in the state you go, you're going to find just blistering hot in whether it be multifamily or retail or office or whatever it might be. There's just great opportunities. And so, but it's challenging for folks outside of the country to understand the complexities of our market compared to their market. And so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Is trying to get visas that would enable you to be able to invest. And all those folks from Brazil and the UK and Germany and Canada, those are the largest investors in our area, in the state. It gives them some ideas about what to do. Steven, we like reading reviews. Always like reviews.
Let's read a review.
This is my favorite type. Asking about the Invest Florida show. Is the Invest Florida show by Eric Odom is hands down my favorite.
What am I, chopped liver?
No mention. No mention.
Okay.
That's the best. That's the ones I know that Steven's mother didn't put up.
Yeah.
That there was
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Luke Rorich, real estate agent from Tampa, left that review. And Luke, we appreciate you. If you leave reviews, we're going to read them out, and we do appreciate it. And it's not just for us. The reviews are beneficial for potential guests. We work very hard on producing this show. And believe it or not every speaker, every guest wants to come on. And so there's a convincing process for us of that the time that they invest with. This is a half hour, plus the time that it takes for them to prepare for the show. So maybe it's a 2-hour commitment and busy people, they need to know that there's an audience that listen, that care. And so we don't collect revenue off this. This is not a revenue producer for us in any shape or form. We originally started this as an encyclopedia for our clients that would ask us. We get frequently asked questions. And really, that's what it was meant for. And it's grown from that. But we don't really make money off this show. And the way that you can not only help us, but in return, but help yourselves is just, if you haven't done so, please go on and leave a review on Google iTunes or on Stitcher or one of the other podcast formats that are out there. And it's tremendously beneficial for us because it does make it easier on us to get guests. Stephen, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah,
I thought you left. This guy doesn't mention you, and I see your.
Yeah, I know. I just like I'm going home, but I mean, really, guys, guests it's what makes it work for all of us. So please, if you think of someone also that could be a good guest, and we could all learn from him, let us know, and we'll be happy to have him on the podcast. But now let's roll into our show. Today we have with us Lauren Cohen from eCounselGlobal.com. Lauren is an international lawyer, realtor, and cross-border expert. Lauren is also a best-selling author and sought-after speaker, and a globally acclaimed legal and real estate business advisor. She has been featured in Inc. magazine, The Wall Street Journal, NPR, Working Mother, TV, and many podcasts and radio shows. As a lawyer and realtor, Lauren is particularly well suited to guide investors in their cross-border investment pursuits, employing a concierge approach to commercial investments, both domestically and internationally. Lauren, welcome to the Invest Florida show.
Thank you, Stephen. It's a pleasure to be here.
Lauren, really appreciate you investing time with us today. Why don't you give our listeners a 30,000-foot view of how you got to where you are now in terms of focusing on real estate as an attorney and a realtor. You're in South Florida, right? You're in Boca, correct?
I'm in South Florida, although physically at the moment I'm in Orlando. But yes, I am originally from Toronto, and I live and work in South Florida and serve clients from there. So sure, I will do my very best.
So you're like us. You're all over the place.
Oh, literally, we've got to do what we've got to do. I'm dying to go to Toronto, but that's not in the cards with the 2-week quarantine. And they just went on lockdown again today. So
ouch.
In any event, I have been in the business world for many, many years. I was in-house counsel, and I got my real estate license 12 years ago. And I did I represented a couple of buyers in flips back then. And then I kind of just let the license just stick it out. I did the CLEs, or I guess they're CEs in real estate. I'm so used to the continuing legal education, and was writing business plans and wrote a ton of business plans for real estate investors and business owners from literally all over the world. And of course, being from Canada, there are so many real estate investors that are investing from Canada into the US. And all of the pieces just started coming together. I joined eXp Realty, a cloud-based brokerage, almost a year ago. COVID happened, and all of the avenues were leading toward this. I created a partnership with an amazing coaching program out of Calgary. We're taking it international, and all the pieces just lined up, kind of like the stars aligning. And I realized that the whole purpose, my purpose in life, is to help my clients invest, live, work, and play across borders. It's not just between Canada and the US, but literally from everywhere in the world. And that's what prompted me to focus on real estate.
So when you're saying everywhere in the world, you're focusing really on people from outside America coming to investing in America and figuring out a way to stay there by doing that.
Yes, for the most part, although I am still a licensed lawyer in Ontario in Canada, and I do still work with people that are investing into Canada. And I think, to be honest with you, that's becoming much more popular as the days pass by.
So give us a scenario of how can somebody become a legal United States resident by investing in real estate, because there's so much misinformation about that, and probably a lot of people don't even know what the steps are.
Sure. Thank you. Well, first, let me clarify that there are two types of visas, or two types of immigration status. One is non-immigrant and one is immigrant. So you don't become a resident until you become an immigrant, and that's a green card. And that is a much more expensive and onerous endeavor than the one that I focus on for real estate investing, which is a non-immigrant E2 treaty investor visa. The treaty investor visa is based on a treaty between the U.S. and the other country. Let's take Canada, for example, because it's the easiest one. So Canada and the U.S. have a treaty of trade and commerce. If you invest a substantial amount in the U.S., and you have a non-marginal business and you have an economic impact and you employ people and you have a viable business, you can get a visa. Now, a lot of people don't think that real estate is a business, and passive investing is not. Flipping homes is not a business. It won't work unless you're flipping like 1 million homes, okay, like a huge volume. But if you're buying and holding or using the BRRRR method or renovating and actually renting and doing a business or investing in commercial real estate, multifamily, Airbnb, there are many, many ways to use real estate to qualify for that visa, which is a renewable visa, provided that you're from certain countries. And of course, we can share that with the audience at a later stage.
So I just have a question, and you'll get into the details, but say somebody comes in and they buy a multifamily property and they get a visa. What happens if they sell the property? Do they lose that renewable status?
No, they would have to move the visa to a different property. They would have to submit potentially an amended and restated business plan. They would have to notify immigration if the business changes, because if it's based on that investment, you can certainly move your investment, but your investment still has to be intact. So as long as you're moving, maybe you'll do a 1031 exchange into a new property, for example, that's still multifamily. And as long as your business is still viable, you may be able to still qualify. It's all about looking at each individual case. And it's definitely not a situation, as I'm sure you know, as an immigrant yourself, that it's not a situation of one size fits all. Right. And too many people think it is. So what might work for Joe out of Canada may not work for Jane out of France. It's going to really depend on the business structure and the goals, both short and long term. And we look at 8 elements of real estate investing across borders. And one of those elements is the visa. That's not the only element. So you may need a visa to run your business. You may want a visa to run your business. There's a difference, right? And we have to look at what that looks like and how it impacts your real estate investing, for example.
Yeah, and the E2 visa, it's interesting because I get contacted regularly from folks outside of the country looking for businesses to buy it with the intention of going in with trying to apply as an E2, but they don't know what to do. And, I try to talk to them about real estate. And so it's great that we're having you on the show to sort of highlight this, because it's an issue that people really don't understand. And that's a simple concept for people to grasp. They might be, these folks that have money from overseas probably own some real estate, investment real estates in the country that they reside, but they're trying to apply whatever they do in their home country. Like, oh, well, I run a restaurant, so I would like to run a restaurant. Well, you also have 3 Airbnbs. Why can't you just do some Airbnbs? And they don't really understand how that works and why. So can you talk a little bit more about the successes on the real estate side, like what you've seen work and what can people sort of, and I know it's kind of a complicated question because it's broad, but what are you seeing people doing in terms of the investment vehicle on the real estate side to be able to qualify for their E2s?
When you say vehicle, do you mean entity or do you mean type of real estate? Just to clarify, please.
Type of real estate.
Okay. So it's really the only type of real estate that I generally don't like for an E2 or that generally is frowned upon are single family homes. Okay. For the most part, most other types of real estate, from vacant land that you're going to develop to multifamily, to apartments, to commercial, to industrial, to retail, could potentially qualify for an E2 visa. Now, single family homes, if you're managing enough of them, and this is maybe 20, then we could make a case that it's a business. The key is that you don't want to be involved in a passive business. And real estate has been seen over time and is still seen as a passive investment because you're having monthly returns and residual income and so on. So as long as we, in the business plan, write the story that you're running this as a business and that you have to have boots on the ground, that's the key. Why do you need to be in the US running this business actively day to day? We have to write that story around the types of investments. Now, we like multifamily, Airbnb, apartment buildings, commercial, hybrids of them, right? Because if you see there's a multifamily and maybe you're developing an apartment building, and maybe in the future you're going to be building out a retail space, and you're going to be having a lot of different tenants and employing people. This is what it's all about. It's all about telling that story that you're going to have a substantial investment in a business that's not just supporting yourself and your family, and it's going to be employing people and having an economic impact both in your immediate area and the broader geographic area.
So let me ask you one question that just comes front of mind to me, because as an international investor who really isn't here and isn't present, maybe the first thing they would think about is a triple net investment. Mm-hmm. Would that qualify as a business that they
no,
really don't need?
Not.
Okay. It's passive.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's totally passive. So that's the key. Now, the beauty, I will say, as we discussed before the show started, even immigration lawyers and lawyers in general and business advisors don't realize that this is a niche and this can be done, because you have to have that skill set of the business together with the legal, together with the real estate, and combining those in a harmonized approach. So what we do at my company is we bring in experts that are going to make sure that the job gets done. Like, for example, if we're going to decide on the location, I'm not going to be helping them choose the investments in Las Vegas, but that might be the ideal location for them. But I'm going to have a team that's going to be on the ground helping them, right? And they're vetted, a vetted network of professionals. This is a key when you're a foreign national. You don't want to rely on the internet, although too many people do. And you don't want to find the cheapest or, quickest path. You want to find the one that's going to bring you the longest term lucrative success, most lucrative success. And that's important to understand. So what I focus on, and I think you guys will agree with me, is value. We have to bring value to our clients. And the value is that knowledge and expertise to bring them from, I don't know what I'm doing. Does this work for a visa, to I know what I'm doing. I'm going to get a visa because I'm creating a real business in the US and I want to impact the economy.
Yeah, you really have to look at it from a holistic standpoint when you're advising these types of clients, because it's not just the visa. It's also the investment. It's also the tax consequences. It's also all these other things that go into whether the other tools that the investor needs to be successful. And so you really can't just go and, you have people calling, hey, I'll just buy a piece of property, but then there's so many other things they just don't understand.
Yep.
Or buy a business. There's so many other things they don't understand. They really need that team approach. And so it's great that you understand that, and that you're out there basically putting together and helping them with a turnkey solution to be able to solve their issues.
Yeah, and the other thing that people tend to forget is that it's not necessarily just about your investments, but maybe you want to build a property management company that manages not only your investments, but others. Maybe you want to buy a property management franchise and then create your investment profile in real estate. There's all kinds of ways to skin the cat, and we have to just figure out the way that makes the most sense for you. Sometimes it's based on business acumen or experience, or whether you're an experienced real estate investor in your home country or even in the US. So I had a gentleman call me today. He has a client who bought a property 10 years ago. So I said to him, it's a realtor. I said to him, well, what type of property? Single family. I said, well, that's not going to help. I mean, it could be a starting point, but it's not going to help him get a visa. Well, he's been renting it for 10 years. I don't care if he's been renting it for 4,000 years. It's not, and it's a very substantial investment, by the way. It's not about the amount or the value of the property. It's about the volume, the number of doors. And this is what matters, because you're not running a business having one or two doors. You're running a business having 10 or 20 doors that you're managing actively on an ongoing basis.
So Lauren, I would like to ask you a question from a different perspective. We have listeners to the show in many overseas countries. And, you know, we tend to speak here from the perspective of an American. It's great. You come in and you get a visa and you can stay. But there's certain countries where people may not feel the need to have a visa. Why do they need it? If someone's in France or Denmark, it's a free country. You can move around. Germany, you can do what you want, or Canada. But there are other countries where it's not, and I'm particularly conscious of that because anybody coming from outside will know the feelings associated with that, where you cannot move capital. And then what are the implications for them in the home country if somehow part A is to get the money out, but part B that they invest and become a resident here? You know, I mean, I recall, at least in South Africa, when I grew up, that would not have been looked on favorably. And so I just wonder what the implications are in reverse, because I'm sure it's a concern of some foreign investors who listen to this podcast.
Yes, of course. And on top of that, there's also restrictions for some countries. There's still bans. You know, there are still, the E2 is not available to people from every country. So it's not preferential treatment. It's just based on treaty. But there are all kinds of implications. When the money comes in, you have to prove that it came from a lawful source. You have to trace those funds. That's not always easy from some of these more challenging countries. We're not going to name names. But the fact is, like all of the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, South Africa, and China, for example, Saudi Arabia, many very large countries do not have a treaty available. And they also have challenges in terms of exporting money, moving the money out of the country. China is one big one with the huge volume of people. So that's why the harmonized approach is so important. Now, I'm not going to say that I am going to get you an expert in your home country, but we are going to advise you that you need to speak with experts in your home country to find out how your moving of the money is going to be treated and how you're going to impact your tax status. One thing that I will say, you know, working extensively with Canadians, because I am Canadian, is there are tons and tons of U.S. companies that train Canadians on how to invest in U.S. real estate. Many, very large, significant companies. They teach people, this is how you invest in U.S. real estate, paying no attention to how that investment might impact their Canadian tax status. An example is the 1031 exchange, which is available in the U.S. to pretty much anybody that it meets the requirements of a 1031, exchanging for like-in-kind property within a certain period of time and being able to defer capital gains, right?
Right.
So anybody can potentially qualify for this. So Canadians can potentially qualify for a 1031 exchange. They do a 1031, they get the deferral of tax here. They go back, they file their tax return in Canada. Canada Revenue Agency says, no. We don't recognize that. You have to pay tax now in Canada. Well, who's told them that? And this is a big problem because it's particularly rampant between Canada and the U.S. for obvious reasons. It's just a land border, although right now it's a little more than that. But it's a challenge.
There's no wall yet.
There's no wall yet. Oh God, please.
But anyway, you know, the fact is I'm just amazed at how many Canadians are active in our market.
Especially in Florida. Canada is the number one investor in Florida. Canadians are the number one investor. And here I'm currently in Orlando, you've got Brits and Canadians and Brazilians invested literally very, very heavily. Now, I think you asked the question, what if somebody doesn't want a visa? Well, you don't have to get a visa. However, if you want to live and work in the U.S., you definitely need a visa. And many of my clients don't ever plan to or intend to move to the U.S. I have one of my VIP number one clients who is not a real estate investor. He owns a business that he does a lot of work usually in the U.S. He is Canadian. He just got a treaty visa because he wants to have that ease of transversing the borders without any challenges. So he can run his business eventually when he gets back to doing trade shows and events. He can come to the US and go back to Canada and come to the US and not have problems at the border or be questioned or challenged or sent to secondary. That's a problem that could potentially arise for a lot of these real estate investors that are building their portfolios in the US.
Talk to us a little bit about cash flow. And I know there's nothing etched in stone because the immigration laws are written with wiggle room in them. But I know there's not a cash flow bogey, but can you talk to us a little bit about, from a cash flow standpoint, what it would take to qualify for an E2 visa?
So it's not really about cash flow as much as it is about, let me rephrase that. The cash flow component is that you have to not have a marginal business. So if your cash flow, let's say, is 40,000 net, okay, year over year, that's not really enough and you're not taking a salary. That doesn't count as a substantial non-marginal business because you're not even supporting your family. And if you have 3 or 4 employees and you're taking a salary, a decent salary, it doesn't have to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, a fair market value salary for your services, let's say 75, 100,000, okay? And then you have a 40,000 net profit, then that could be potentially a non-marginal business. And again, it's going to depend on the types of investments that you have because commercial is going to be looked at differently than residential. So, and cash flow obviously has also been impacted by COVID, and they're going to be cognizant of this at the consulates.
And talk to us a little bit about debt. Can investors carry debt on their real estate investments?
Yes, you can carry debt as long as your investment alone is substantial. So let's say that you're investing in 4 properties at $250,000 each, and you carry $600,000 mortgage on all 4 of them, like it's a split about the 4 of them. So you have a $400,000 net investment out of pocket. That can definitely qualify if you have the financing. That's not a problem. It's all about making sure that your actual investment that's at risk, invested and at risk at the time of the application, is substantial. And that would be a substantial investment in 4 multifamily properties.
And let's also talk about, because I've had this exact scenario, that dad has some real estate. He owns a restaurant. This was a real live example for me several years ago, but father owns a couple of restaurants in Italy. They also own a handful of apartment complexes. And father wants son to go over to Florida and buy some multifamily, and he doesn't want him underneath his skirt back in Italy. He wants him to sort of go off and do his own thing. So he's going to help finance son to run this business in the U.S. And because they were wanting to buy a fairly big asset, talk about they got cousins and uncles and everybody else to invest in this project. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that would affect this type of investment? Because a lot of folks look at it and go, well, I have $100,000, but it's not going to be enough to have a substantial investment in real estate. So what do I do to be able to get that substantial investment? And many times it's raising equity from friends and family to do so. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, and I'm going to also put a caveat that I didn't put at the beginning. None of this is legal advice, okay? So I'm not providing legal advice.
Sure. I'm
just giving general guidance, and that's really important to understand. And each case is very specific, and we bring in experts to guide our clients. So I just want to please make that super clear.
Of course.
Okay. So there's a couple of requirements. The son would have to own at least 50% of the business into which he is investing, or the business he's developing, or whatever the case may be. Okay. the father can gift the son the money for that investment, as long as, again, you can show the path and source of funds for that money. It has to come into the son in his personal name, and then he can invest it into the business. That's the tracing of the funds. Now, if others want to invest in the business, that's fine, as long as the son has that 50% ownership interest in the business. That's the qualification. It has to be 50% owned by an Italian national to qualify.
You mentioned land a little bit earlier. What are the implications for investing in land? Because it's not giving a cash flow. There must be some kind of timeline in which a foreign investor would have to develop, or you lose your visa.
100%. There's no specific timeline, but it's all about the business plan. So if you're buying land and you're developing that land for whatever purpose, a farm, a business, mixed use facility, whatever the case may be, your business plan is going to address that and bring in the staff that's going to build the land. So you can't just have land that's sitting dormant and waiting 5 years while the visa term is being processed to develop that land. That's all in the business plan, and that's where the structure comes from, and the impact and the story. The story is the most important component of the application.
So, in other words, in the story, you'll put that it takes 9 months to get permits and do the rezoning and all that other stuff, because it's a long period.
Correct. Yes. And they are aware of that. As long as there is a viable business plan that's written by a professional, which, as I say, we've been doing for 20 years, it's not just the same business plan as you would write to get venture capital, or the same business plan as you would write to just run your business. It's a very specific, very targeted business plan focused on the visa. And it's all about the story that you tell, and why, again, you need those boots on the ground to be able to run your business. Why do you need to be here to develop that land? What do you need to do physically to be able to build that building, or whatever the case may be?
Talk to us a little bit about your clients. Are they investing primarily in Florida, or are they investing anywhere in the U.S.? Or how's that working, Lauren?
Well, I happen to be in Florida, and obviously as a Canadian, a lot of Canadians happen to like Florida. So when I'm working with Canadians, I would say half of them are investing in Florida to some extent, but it's not exclusively in Florida. There are many pockets in the country that are very, very popular, such as Atlanta, for example, Houston, Vegas, Detroit, North Carolina, Raleigh, Durham, and areas, all kinds of areas.
And what kinds of properties? For instance, multifamily is tougher now. I mean, that would seem the most natural way or the most natural class that people would want to invest in. But it's harder to find those assets now. So what types of properties are they investing in?
Well, we can create Airbnbs. We can split single families, perhaps, if we get the right permits. We can develop land. We can invest in commercial, which is very down right now. We can create new businesses that are COVID friendly. There are also ways to use, like I said, develop a property management company. I have an electrical contractor right now that's going to be developing a property management company. He brings his skill set to the table, develop a property management company. He includes some of his own real estate investing, and he provides the service to third parties.
Talk to us about finding deals, because the bottleneck for us on any of them, with any investor, is finding those deals. And we have folks that, we've been working with for years and years and years. And, we find a deal, we get something done, and then it's, another 3 years before we can find another deal for them. So what kind of process do you go through to try to expose your clients to as many deals as possible so they can find that one that really works for them?
So, I'm not trying to toot the horn of eXp Realty, but I'm part of a network of 38,000 realtors that all share deals with each other and opportunities, not only in this country, but in 7 other countries. And so, but obviously I'm focused mainly on deals in this country. And so when I'm looking for opportunities, I'll collaborate with my colleagues all over the country, depending on the strategy that I build for the client. So there's always a deal. And I'm also, as I said, a real estate coach. And part of our real estate coaching program is teaching people how to invest in the U.S. in subject twos, subject to the mortgage, taking title subject to. And those properties the distressed property market is going to open up in a big way it already is starting, but January, I think we're going to see numbers, just exorbitant numbers, because people are not paying their mortgages. So the opportunities are there. You just have to work with the right team of professionals to find them and make sure that they're vetted and properly analyzed so that the numbers work.
So I've got another question, sort of changing gears a little bit. Can you talk to us, because EB5 was a really hot visa class. And it seems that maybe not so much anymore. Can you talk, but that's still, it's people ask about it and they conflate EB5s and E2s. Can you talk to us a little bit about the two of them and like why they're different?
Well, EB5 is a green card by investment. It's based on a minimum investment right now of $900,000 or $1.8 million, depending on the location. You have to create at least 10 new full-time jobs, permanent full-time jobs, and it's a very long process. E2 is a non-immigrant visa, which has a contrary intent to EB5, and you can get it very quickly, and it doesn't have a minimum threshold. That's just guidelines, substantial investment. There's no specific number of employees. Now, what a lot of my clients do is they'll do an E2 initially and then use that E2 investment to eventually apply for an EB5 and increase their investment amount in their business model. So they're definitely extraordinarily different. One is permanent and one is temporary in nature, but there are ways to marry the two together.
Gotcha.
So if people want to contact you and learn a little bit more about how you can help them, what's the best way to reach you?
Well, there's a couple of ways. Thanks for asking. So the easiest way to set up a consult, for example, I offer free consults to all of my podcast listeners. And I have my own podcast, which I'll invite you guys to be on. It's called Investing Across Borders. But the easiest way to set up a free consult with me is to go to bit.ly/LAC. That's my initials, LAC Explore. And you can set up a consult with me at your convenience. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn under Lauren ESQ, LAURENESQ. And my site, as you mentioned, is eCouncil Global. So feel free to connect with me, founder at eCouncilGlobal.com, ECOUNCILGLOBAL.com. And I'm happy to share any information with your listeners as they would like and help them to find their ways to invest, live, work, and play across borders.
Awesome. Lauren, are there any other points you would like to discuss with our listeners before we let you go?
I'll tell you one thing that I'd love to mention. The super important thing to remember when you're investing, not only in your home country, but especially when you're investing in another country, is that you don't know everything. And you need a team, and you need a harmonized approach. And if you go based on price, or you find the cheapest property or the cheapest guide or the cheapest lawyer or the cheapest accountant, you're never going to get that harmonized approach. And the long-term success that you are striving to achieve is only going to be achieved if you use a team of professionals that work collaboratively and are streamlined. And that is really, really important when you are looking at investing, especially outside of your own home country. The laws that could completely put you out of business, if you violate them, you could be stopped in your tracks from doing business. You could end up having to abandon your investments, and you're risking a huge amount of time, money, and effort by not using the right approach.
And, just piggybacking on that for a minute, just even on local investments, I think we see the same thing applied, where we sometimes see investors just make horrible mistakes because they're making assumptions and don't want to build a team. And we see it quite often, actually.
Lauren, really appreciate the time that you spent with us today. Stephen, anything else before we let Lauren go?
No, Lauren, thank you very much. And it's good to have you on our side of the border.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on this side, too.
And that was Lauren Cohen talking investing in the U.S. for National. Stephen, what would you like to say to summarize what Lauren talked to us about?
So there's a lot of misinformation and people just don't understand that part of the business. I think it's very informative, especially for our foreign listeners. But, the bottom line is that there is a way to use real estate as a vehicle for obtaining a visa in the United States, but you have to do it in the right way and use qualified professionals to help you.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, when folks are looking to come over here to the U.S., to Florida, it's just so many moving pieces. It becomes overwhelming. And Lauren's right. You have to be able to, it's hard because they talk to a broker, they talk to an agent, or they talk to somebody who wants to sell them a business, but they can't tie all of these other pieces together like they need to, whether it be their housing, their accounting, the legal aspect, the investment aspect, and really being able to form a team, I think, is the most important thing for these investors coming from the outside. Somebody who has the contacts to be able to bring it all together for them. And so, she's 100% right. And it was great to be able to have Lauren on the show today to talk about this matter, because we do have a number of listeners from outside of the country, and they're curious about how to get the ball rolling over here. Stephen, Lauren was a great guest. Where can we find other great guests?
Best place to go, the best, is www.investfloridashow.com. That's our website where we have an archive of all our past podcasts. And you could also listen while you're mobile. Download the app onto your mobile device and listen while you're in the gym or driving or even at work.
Guys, as always, we appreciate the time that you invest with us each and every episode. And until next time, hasta la vista.
You've just listened to the Invest Florida podcast with Eric Odom and Stephen Silverman. Join us every week for actionable real estate investment ideas, and of course, visit our website at www.investfloridashow.com for more shows and tips on how to earn a cash flow in the real estate market in Florida. While hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show have no reason to doubt the validity of comments of our guests, we do not warranty their accuracy. Please check with your legal, financial, and tax advisors before entering into any investment. Returns will vary from person to person and deal to deal based on unique circumstances. All information expressed in this show is for educational purposes only. Opinions of the guests are not necessarily shared by the hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show.